Good morning, everybody. So, I took the pleasure of watching Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. I actually had to watch it twice just so I could accurately give you an actual review on this movie. So, let's get into it. Okay, so in the new Mission Impossible movie, Dead Reckoning, I got it! Part 1. Ethan Hunt and his IMF team are in a race to be in possession of a piece of technology that can threaten the entire world. I know, sounds like every other spy movie or Mission Impossible movie. The catch, though, is that the enemy that is trying to also possess this piece of technology is actually the technology itself. Yeah, we're talking about AI system. So the dangerous part about this AI system is that not only can it hack any piece of technology like most pieces of AI technology, but it can also predict the actions of other people, which is what really puts the IMF team at risk, because unlike Ethan Hunt, who can complete missions with the lowest probability, everybody else in his team always operates using a high amount of probability. In every movie that he does with Mission Impossible, he's doing a stunt that other people would seem impossible, with the lowest amount of probability of success. Meanwhile, everybody else on his team, they use technology and everything, and they operate at a higher probability. So everybody else on his team is compromised, and Ethan Hunt is the only outlier because he's unpredictable. What I did like about this movie was the action. Every time Tom Cruise does these movies, he always steps up the ante when it comes to action, to give you something new in every movie, which I feel that a lot of new movies fail to do to keep it refreshing. Another thing I liked about the movie was the story. Now, obviously, using AI as an enemy is something that we don't normally see involving a spy movie. AI being able to predict what agents are going to do in the field is really interesting. Another thing about the story that I like is that the fact that you're able to shine more light on Ethan Hunt's past. If you even rewind it back to the first Mission Impossible movie, you know, Ethan Hunt is a young agent who now kind of has to take over the IMF team in order to complete the mission. But we don't know anything about how Ethan Hunt joined the IMF to begin with. They seem to do this a lot more, especially with franchises that have lasted a long time, like James Bond. Skyfall was the best example to describe what they did in this movie, because they shined a lot more light on James Bond's character, Daniel Craig, about how he grew up. And then, of course, they used, like, you know, the old Rolls Royce in this movie and brought back more of an old school type of James Bond element, which really made that new franchise refreshing. So they brought in Ethan Hunt's past, brought it into this one, and we're like, oh, now we know a lot more about Ethan Hunt, other than the fact that, oh, we got a mission to complete, let's complete the mission. Ethan Hunt is so unpredictable. The AI system uses an assassin. That is the reason why Ethan Hunt is part of the IMF to begin with. This assassin is the only person who Ethan Hunt couldn't track down, who he couldn't take out, he couldn't even catch. Another thing I did like about this movie was that you cannot complain that there are no strong female characters in this movie, because there were quite a few strong female characters in this movie that hold their own. There are definitely some things that I did not like about this movie. Haley Atwell's character, if I'm saying her name wrong, Atwell, I guess that's how you're saying her name. I did not like her character in this movie. Now, the director had pointed out that her character is not a Mission Impossible character. Clearly. She really stands out, and not necessarily a good way. I found her character to be annoying. Now, in this movie, she plays a thief. And during the good hour to maybe an hour and a half of this movie, Ethan Hunt is trying to track down this chick. Like, yo, you've got something that I need. You have no idea what you're really getting yourself into. And every single time Ethan tries to help her out, she keeps running away. Because she's a thief. She's only doing it for the money. Because she's a thief. Thinking that she knows better. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Clearly you don't know what you're doing. And all these people are trying to go after her and Ethan. And she's not listening. Another thing I didn't like about this movie were there are two agents. So clearly Ethan is not obeying what the government wants, and they send all these agents, especially two agents, to track down Ethan. And every time they get close to catching Ethan, Ethan always is one step ahead of them. So it's like they're only using these characters just to move the plot along. You could have taken out these characters and the movie would have continued as planned. Like, there was really no reason to have these two guys in this movie. And especially at one point, so there was an older agent paired with a younger agent. And the younger agent, towards the end of the movie, is even contemplating, why are we doing this in the first place? Maybe Ethan is doing this because he knows that some of this stuff should not be in the hands of anybody. It's too dangerous for anybody to have. But the old guy's an old head. Like, oh, I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing my job. Even towards the end of the movie, Ethan is proven right that maybe some people in our government we can't depend on. And maybe Ethan knows what's best. And they still try to carry out their mission and try to bring in Ethan, even though you know he's right. Another thing I did not like about this movie was that there were too many characters in this movie. The AI system has its own team that's trying to protect its location so that nobody can get to it and control it. You got the IMF team that are trying to go after this AI system. You've got the U.S. government who has agents that are trying to track down Ethan, and you have Haley Atwell's character who is in the centerpiece of all this in the first place. You've got so many moving pieces in this movie, and it's a two-parter. I would have divided up all these characters. So now I'm thinking to myself, yo, part 2 better be real solid. Because you threw so much in on this one movie that I feel that the part 2 is going to be a little bit lackluster. Is this movie going to be 2.5 hours as well, or is it going to be an hour and a half? So if I were to rate this movie, I would rate it a 7 out of 10. A solid 7 out of 10. Because it was a fun movie. Action. There are parts of the movie that were fun to watch as well, but there were way too many characters. It kind of dragged on for a little bit. I got bored a little bit in the movie, which, I mean, that's a red flag if I'm starting to get bored in the movie. It was fun, but it was a bit dry at times. It's not the strongest Mission Impossible movie out of the whole franchise,